Hello everyone, today we're taking a look at the Wasp 85X. On the website, it's called a whoop and a toothpick. Running 1202 8700 kV motors, running 2-inch props. The all-in-one board features an F411 flight controller and a 5-amp 4-in-1 ESC. And as you can see there, it's manufactured by JHEMCU. And the motors are soldered on, no connectors. The VTX is power switchable from 25 milliwatts to 200 milliwatts. The camera is the GL950 Pro, which is specific to the Geelang brand, and it is super wide. Has a 10-volt capacitor down in there. Originally mine came with this FR Sky receiver, but it died in a crash. I installed this DSMX receiver. It has rolled pin PH2 connectors. You can fly it on 1S with this little jumper. Comes with 4 300 milliamp batteries, an extra canopy, mine's clear in this case, an extra set of props, some screws, some nuts, a hex tool, and a screwdriver, the aforementioned 1S battery jumper, a secondary holder for a true 2S battery, which fits the 525 from RDQ, the previous iteration of the G&B 450, the RDQ 450, but it will not fit these rectangular style of batteries. It also comes with this lead so you can charge it on your traditional charger. Comes with this full color 1-page getting started manual, sticker application manual. It does come with some of those stickers already on it, and several sets of different color stickers. It also comes with a case that does have a handle. Motor post to motor post, I am getting about 85 millimeters. Single bottom plate looks to be 2.5 millimeters thick. It weighs just a touch over 43 grams. With two 1S batteries, it weighs 59.5 grams. I flew it primarily on these G&B 350 milliamp batteries, which brings the weight up to just over 60 grams. As you can see, and you can probably hear through the audio recording that comes through a separate camera, got a fair bit of wind, but not bad. This handles it just fine. I got fortunate in that I had a number of days that it was calmer and I could do some testing with something that doesn't handle wind quite as well, and I could also fly this. And something that I found with this particular camera, it's super wide, as I mentioned in the quick roll. Now, I'm a field of view guy. I like a super wide field of view, and this is super wide field of view. And out of the box, my first flight experience was kind of strange. It was almost like, whoa, this is really big. I don't know if I can handle this. And this isn't great as far as this particular flight footage that I've got going here. But I found myself doing this low pass sort of turning. And I'll show you a better sample of that. But it just continually, I went out and with that really big field of view, I just found myself cruising around kind of NASCAR style, going left and right hand turns, and just trying to get as low and find little fun, interesting little crevasses, usually around the perimeter of the yard to fly through. But I knew for review purposes, I needed to mix it up. I needed to do a couple different things, and something that you already saw was the low battery voltage warning. That comes through those rolled pins. I think it would have been a better option to just have an XT30 on it. I think in the case that they didn't do that and they wanted to ship batteries with it, that they probably should have at least included an XT30 connector. That's something that most people in this hobby could handle. It doesn't require any disassembly. It doesn't require really any high set of soldering skills or really any knowledge other than put the red wire where it says plus in the connector, put the black wire where it says negative, and it's pretty straightforward, provided that the connector does have a plus and minus on it. I don't know if I've run into any of those connectors that don't, but it's not going to be a screaming demon. It's not going to be a high flyer. 2-inchers, I haven't actually been much of a fan of 2-inchers, but I did find with this cruising style that I did find some enjoyment in it. And like I said, I found myself cruising the perimeter trying to go as low as I could. And I found that addictive. I have one clip. It was late in the day and I was hurrying it was time to make dinner. And as I'm passing through the porch area where we've got the outdoor furniture and stuff, there was a squirrel. And it was almost that moment where I'm buzzing through there super low and I'm like head height with this squirrel, where you can see the squirrel spot me. And then he just jets out of there. And I circle it back around real quick. To my disappointment, when I got back inside, apparently that was a flight I forgot to hit record. I have the audio recording, but that doesn't matter. That doesn't give us anything. I needed the DVR, but I didn't hit my record button. I am flying with the FPV-1 Orca goggles, or the Orca FPV-1 goggles, and I got a longer antenna to go above my melon, to make sure my head wasn't providing any interference. That was something that I was worried about. That does have the rapid fire module in it as well. This is the stock battery voltage setting, so you've seen that on screen for a while. That can be adjusted, and it comes with Betaflight 411. I think it's 411. It might be 412. I'm sorry, I don't have that in my notes. I just wrote down 411. So you can adjust that with smaller details. So this is what I found myself doing quite a bit, and I think it's just a product of this camera and having that really wide field of view that you can get that sense of speed and pod racing. That's always something that I've enjoyed, is getting down low. It's probably the reason why I fly the way I do, is kind of representing that pod racing that I grew up with as a kid in Star Wars, and trying to replicate that experience through quad flight. And when you watch it, it probably looks boring, but I found it to be really fun, and trying to stay really low, stay just above the blades of grass, and not try to hit anything, and then to turn around and go back the other way. And I found it challenging. I crashed a fair number of times. I'd clip a little weed or something like that. I should have done our gardening cleanup. It would have been more impressive, but I found myself doing this at least for 1 or 2 passes of every flight. And I've got some flights that were just dedicated in this low pass sort of flight. I enjoyed it. It's a weird quirk. I thought I would share it with you. It was something that was new to me, and another flight style I found that I enjoyed.
Oh. Oh, just ran into the tree.
I'll include a few of my crashes and various flight footage that's over there in the corner so you can get a better idea. I do have some damage to report. It does ship with those 2 canopies. It's going to be a little bit challenging to show you. I think it's right here. Yeah. So let me zoom in for a second. This is probably going to mess up my idea of having that recording in the corner. But right here, make the camera brighten up. See, I snapped it right there. I can't remember which crash that was, but like I said, I did break the receiver on a crash. At least I crashed and the receiver no longer works, so I'm presuming that I broke the receiver when I had one of those multiple crashes. But it's good to report that nothing else broke. We have the VTX is secured down to that canopy in 2 positions right here on each side with a little Phillips screw. We do have nuts across the top to hold the canopy down. I did add this one. I don't think it had one there originally to start with, but after a few crashes I noticed that it was getting a little bit loose, probably because this broke up, so I did add one right there. Something to note, this is replaceable. It's a little bit of a pain to replace because you can see that screw goes all the way through, so you have the others to secure it, but it's still going to be a little bit of a pain to secure it or to put a new one on there. And then we have these foam pads here that give us a little resistance between our TPU print and the actual holder. So in this configuration I found that it worked just fine, and these flaps on this larger battery holder, I think that will work out just fine as well. It felt pretty solid in there when I did some dry fit testing, and you can see where it's got the holes right there. It will weigh a little bit different because obviously this is a little bit of a different holder. They did use what looks to be some heat shrink to hold the motor wires down. As I mentioned in the quick roll, the motors are soldered to the board, so you don't have any connectors. That could be a good thing or a bad thing depending upon where you're at for that. For performance, it's a good thing, but the rolled pins on the PH2 connector, that's not a good thing for performance. We're pretty much at the stage of this hobby where we know that rolled pins creates resistance to the battery, so the battery gets depleted a lot faster than it would typically with solid pins. My recommendation for this would be to fly it on batteries like this and put an XT30 on it. Unfortunately, it doesn't come with an XT30, so you'll have to lop this on. Hopefully you have an XT30 of your own, or a friend does, and you can solder that on. You'll get better performance, you'll get better flight time, and the low voltage warning won't annoy you nearly as much. You can see the VTX antenna is held in place with a zip tie that's kept right here. Same thing I would have done in this configuration. They could have molded this, I guess, with an antenna holder in it. You do see where they have a slot in there. Hopefully you can see that, where the antenna comes up through it. This just helps to hold it in place. It could have been redesigned like some of those TPU prints where you see where this part is held with the canopy, but in this particular case it didn't. The receivers do come with some double-sided foam tape, and the receiver is stuck to the back. I didn't find it problematic really any more than any other micro to put a new receiver in there. You might be asking me about DSMX. I used to fly DSMX quite a bit, but I transitioned over to FR Sky because most of the stuff in this hobby comes at least first FR Sky, so I needed to be part of the FR Sky unless I was going to have to put my receiver on just about everything I was going to review, or I had to wait until the DSMX version came out. So that's a little bit of history on me and my evolution in this as well. The frame, As far as its cut, it's not very sharp. I don't talk about the frame cut a lot, but I noticed this one, especially around these motor holes, you can see where maybe the equipment or the bit was a little bit dull, and we've got a little bit of unclean cuts there. Just something that I noticed and I draw your attention to. It does have a good thick bottom plate, so that shouldn't be an issue. I think the only durability issue you might have is going to be with the canopy, which you do get a spare of in the box. Oh, I talked about the antenna, but I don't think I made that very clear. This isn't tape, this is heat shrink that they use to put over the top. I've done that same sort of thing for various antennas. I use heat shrink all the time. I tend to run out of it. It is good to see that they're not using a proprietary board. You can pick up this board from, I know I saw it on at least Banggood, and while I'm talking about the board, I should mention that I did stop for a minute and I took a look at the Betaflight version that's on here. It is 412. So it's not 4.2, 4.12. It does come pre-tuned. I flew it on the tune. I bound it up, set my rates where I set them for just about every quad I fly. I set my modes and my switches up so it's in a familiar spot. I moved the OSD elements around, as you see on every video pretty much on this channel. And then I went out and flew it, and I flew it, and I flew it. I've got about 50 flights in it, and I've got another whooped version of this that I was also flying, and I'll show that on the channel here later. Also, I thought this camera it's almost like a wrapper, was fairly interesting. We've got these two screws kind of holding the camera in place, and it is adjustable because you do have screws on either side. You can actually adjust the camera angle while it's screwed down. The TPU isn't going to lock down the camera angle, so you could find in a crash, especially a crash you might tumble through the grass like I did a bunch of times, that your camera angle will change. But that's pretty close to the camera angle I was flying at most of the time, which is pretty typical for me. It's somewhere around 35, 45 degrees, somewhere in there. It comes with a host of receivers you can purchase this with, and the price is going to vary. You can get it without a receiver. If you've got a spare one you want to put on the board, you'll be able to find the wiring map. I'll put a link to the particular board they have down there. This is sold by MakerFire. I presume MakerFire has also got this board, and if they do have this board, I'll put a link to their web shop for that board if you want to take a look at the pinout or anything of that nature. I'm seeing for receivers FrSky that can do both D8 and D16, FrSky for EU, FlySky, TBS Crossfire, the Nano, and also Spectrum or DSMX. Price is going to vary. Stock price without a receiver is $113. I'll have a link down in the video description if you want to check out further specs, maybe take a look at some of the pictures, shipping costs, things of that nature. And if you have any other comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know in that section down below. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.